Pronouncing names correctly is an important part of the Emcee's job, but it's equally important to all of us in our jobs, our careers, and our everyday life. A person's name is precious to them, and even if they say, "Oh, that's close enough," or "it doesn't really matter," it does. But it's tricky, isn't it? Especially when we get names like this one, or that one. That's Siobhan or Kian. And even there's regional differences on how to pronounce that one. And this chap, is he Lewis or is it Louis? And what about these? Skylar and Mireille. And sometimes it's a matter of personal preference or other regional differences as well. Sarah and Sarah, Helena or Helena, or Megan. So in this short video, I want to give you some tips on pronouncing names from an Emcee's point of view, because we have to do this every single day. And I'm hoping that these 10 tips will help you in your job, your career, and if you ever have to take on the role of an Emcee. Tip number 1, firstly, treat pronouncing names as a fun challenge. If it's interesting, it will become easier. Now, I like, personally, history and geography and heritage, so I often focus on those connections. Here in Australia and New Zealand and other parts of the world, there's a big push to add First Nations names to cities and locations. So by linking those names to my interests, it all becomes easier. Online tools. Now, there are plenty and they are mostly free, and I will leave a link to some of them in the description below. How to pronounce names, pronouncenames.com, etc. Now, my tip here is don't just rely on one site if you're using that method. Try a couple of them to verify, because I've often found quite wild differences between different sites. So people can add their own audio clips and sometimes regional differences kick in. So make sure you test a couple of different ones. LinkedIn is quite useful. Go to your guest speakers page on LinkedIn if they have one, and up where the name is in their profile, there is a small tool for a user of LinkedIn to add an audio clip of their name. This is quite useful, and you will be surprised how many people with tricky names actually do that. And if you've got a tricky name and a LinkedIn profile, make sure you put your name in there as well. YouTube is another resource that I think is overlooked. If your speaker, your guest speaker, is famous or a sports person, a politician, an activist, a writer, etc., they may well feature in many clips on YouTube. They might have their own channel where they introduce themselves. "Hi, it's Timothy Hyde here," etc. Or they may be talked about in a news clip or an interview or a panel discussion. So it's quite overlooked, that one, but a very useful resource. Another method is to look at the speaker's own web page. If they're a politician or a professional speaker, they will probably have one, and it will probably have a bio page. And if they have a tricky name, they will often spell it out phonetically right there. Their office. Quick call to the office. You don't even need to talk to the person involved. Often the receptionist, the person who answers the phone, or their personal assistant will be able to help you out. And your client has probably spoken to the speaker on the phone while they organised the event. So ask them how it's pronounced. And if those things fail, ask the speaker themselves when they arrive and when you have a chat to them before their presentation. They will appreciate it. So don't assume, always be upfront and say, "Just checking." Now, before I give you the last 4 tips, if you've had any value out of this video, would you please give us a thumbs up? It encourages us to make more. Leave a comment below, or why don't you subscribe to the channel in the corner there or down below. We're racing up to 30,000 subscribers, which is pretty exciting at this point. We publish weekly. My next suggestion for you is to try and develop a phonetic spelling shorthand system for yourself. Now, there are many established systems out there already, and you can read about them online, but they're usually far too complicated for what we need. But if you just develop your own system and keep modifying it, you will find that very, very useful. Another thing I like to do, if I have worked out where a surname is from, I remark on that when I meet the speaker. For instance, I say, "Oh, is that Hungarian?" Or "Is that Cambodian or Vietnamese?" And you see their eyes light up. It's like a light bulb going on. It creates such a wonderful connection. Another thing I like to do if they say, "Oh, it doesn't really matter how you pronounce my name," is I say, "How did your grandfather pronounce it?" You can suddenly see that switch go again. It creates a wonderful connection and a rapport between you and the speaker that comes across on stage as well. Hey folks, if you'd like to see how I use a person's name in a very funny introduction technique, then why don't you watch this video coming up right now? Otherwise, I'll see you next week.